Sloan Bennett walked into the grind looking like someone who'd given up on trying. The coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and yesterday's regrets, which somehow made her feel better about the whole situation. At least the venue matched her expectations: low, forgettable, easy to leave. She'd chosen a table near the back exit. Strategic positioning. Her sister Reese had set this up. Just coffee, Sloan. Nothing serious. And Sloan had agreed only because saying no required more energy than showing up and tanking it on purpose. So here she sat wearing her oldest jeans, a sweater 2 sizes too big that hid everything resembling a figure, and absolutely zero effort on her face. If this guy had any sense, he'd take one look and make an excuse about a forgotten appointment. 2 years ago, she'd been planning a wedding. Troy Kimball had stood in their shared apartment with a suitcase in one hand and a smirk that said he'd already won. The letter from First National Bank had arrived 3 days after he left, outstanding balance $52,000. Credit cards opened in her name, charges she'd never authorized, debt she couldn't prove wasn't hers because technically they'd shared accounts, shared addresses, shared a life she'd thought was real. The lawyers had said it would be nearly impossible to prove fraud. So Sloan had paid. 2 years of eating ramen, selling everything not nailed down, moving into a 400-square-foot apartment with appliances from 1987. She'd clawed her way down to $47,312. 6 more months of tutoring 3 nights a week, and she'd be clear. 6 months of freedom from the weight that colored every decision, every purchase, every moment of her life. The bell above the door chimed. Sloan didn't look up. She traced the rim of her untouched coffee cup, practicing her exit lines. "Sorry, this isn't going to work. You seem nice, but I'm not in a place for this. Good luck with everything." The voice was quiet, almost hesitant. Sloan, she glanced up, prepared to deliver her rehearsed disappointment, and found herself looking at a man who seemed just as uncomfortable as she felt. Griffin Hale stood beside her table with the awkward posture of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. He wore dark jeans and a plain gray Henley, no designer labels visible, no watch screaming wealth. His dark hair was slightly too long, like he'd forgotten to schedule a haircut. And his eyes, warm brown, tired around the edges, held the kind of weariness that came from experience, not arrogance. "That's me. You must be Griffin." "I am." He gestured to the chair across from her. "Mind if I sit?" She shrugged. It's a free country. Not exactly welcoming, but he sat anyway, setting down his own coffee. Black, she noticed, nothing fancy. And he folded his hands on the table. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. This was the part where most men launched into their resume job accomplishments. Car hobbies designed to impress. Sloan waited for it, already composing her polite escape. So Griffin said finally, "How bad did Reese twist your arm to make this happen?" Sloan blinked. "What?" "Your sister." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "I'm guessing she didn't take no for an answer. My brother practically staged an intervention to get me here." Despite herself, Sloan felt her shoulders relax a fraction. "She threatened to show up at my classroom and make a scene in front of my students." "Ah, the nuclear option." Griffin's smile widened slightly. "My brother went with emotional blackmail. Told me I was setting a bad example for my daughter by hiding from life." "You have a daughter?" "I do." "Ivy. She's 7. Something shifted in his expression, softening it. "She's the reason I'm here, actually. Not directly, but she asked me the other day why I never go on dates like her friend's dad does. And I didn't have a good answer. That wasn't basically because people are exhausting." Sloan surprised herself by laughing. That's honest. Seemed easier than explaining that most first dates feel like job interviews where both people are lying on their resumes. Griffin took a sip of his coffee, grimaced slightly. "This is terrible, by the way." "I know. I picked it on purpose. To test me, to make leaving easier. The honesty hung between them too raw for a first meeting. Sloane expected him to retreat to smooth it over with some polite fiction. Instead, Griffin nodded slowly. That's fair. For what it's worth, I picked the worst possible shirt this morning for the same reason. That's not a bad shirt. It has a stain on the shoulder. Coffee from 3 days ago, I just wore it inside out. Sloane looked closer and realized he was right. There was a faint discoloration near the seam. She found herself smiling despite her best efforts. We're both disasters. Absolutely. Griffin leaned back in his chair, and some of the tension left his posture. Want to start over? Pretend we're two normal people having coffee instead of two people trying to sabotage their siblings' matchmaking. I don't know if I remember how to be normal. Me neither. But we could try being honest instead. See where that goes. Sloane studied him for a long moment. There was no performance in his manner, no smooth charm or calculated interest, just a tired father who looked like he'd forgotten how to do this same as her. Okay. Honest. I'm an elementary school teacher, 3rd grade. I spend my days with 8-year-olds, which means I have the patience of a saint and the ability to survive on 4 hours of sleep and lukewarm coffee. Impressive. Griffin's expression suggested he meant it. I work in management, corporate stuff. It's boring mostly. The interesting part of my life is Ivy. Everything else is just what I do to make sure she's taken care of. How long have you been on your own with her? 5 years. Her mother passed when she was 2. The simple statement carried weight that didn't need elaboration. Sloane recognized that tone, the voice of someone who'd survived something that should have broken them. I'm sorry. Thank you. Griffin traced the edge of his coffee cup, an unconscious echo of her earlier gesture. It's been long enough that we've found our rhythm, but it's also been long enough that I forgot how to do this. Adult conversation that isn't about parent-teacher conferences or grocery lists. I get that. Different reason, but same result. Sloane surprised herself by continuing. I was engaged 2 years ago. Called it off 6 months before the wedding when I found out he'd been using my name to open credit cards. Spent the last 2 years paying off debt I didn't create and remembering how to trust my own judgment. She hadn't meant to say all that. Definitely hadn't planned to lead with her greatest hit of humiliation. But something about Griffin's quiet presence made the truth feel less dangerous than usual. That's terrible. Griffin's anger on her behalf was evident. Did you press charges? Tried. He was smart about it. Technically, we had shared accounts, shared addresses. Lawyers said it would be nearly impossible to prove I didn't authorize it. Sloane shook her head. So, I just paid it. Took on extra tutoring jobs, sold everything that wasn't nailed down, moved into the cheapest apartment I could find. I'm almost done. Another 6 months and I'll be clear. That takes incredible strength. It takes stubbornness and a really good relationship with instant ramen. Griffin smiled, but his eyes were serious. Strength and stubbornness aren't mutually exclusive. Most strong people I know are just too stubborn to quit. The conversation shifted, then becoming easier. They talked about teaching. Sloane's stories about her students made Griffin laugh, genuine and unguarded. He told her about Ivy's current obsession with dinosaurs and her insistence on wearing her Halloween costume to school in January. She's strong-willed, Griffin said, affection clear in his voice. Takes after her mother that way. What was she like? Sloane asked, then immediately regretted it. Sorry you don't have to. It's okay. I don't mind talking about Rachel. Griffin's expression was thoughtful, nostalgic, but not pained. She was fierce. Brilliant. The kind of person who walked into a room and immediately organized it to run better. She would have loved teaching, actually. She had that same patience you described, that ability to see potential in people and pull it out of them. She sounds wonderful. She was. And she would have kicked my ass for hiding from life for 5 years. Griffin smiled sadly. I think that's what my brother was getting at. Not that I need to replace her. You can't replace people. But that she wouldn't want Ivy growing up watching me shut down. Sloane understood that. The weight of someone else's expectations, even someone gone. the responsibility of living in a way that honored what they'd given you. "My students saved me," she said quietly. "After everything fell apart, they were the reason I got out of bed." Hard to wallow when 23 kids need you to teach them fractions and remind them to wash their hands after recess. That's the thing about being responsible for other people. Griffin agreed. It doesn't leave much room for falling apart. Sometimes I'm not sure if that's good or bad. Both, probably. Most important things are, they ordered second coffees, still terrible but somehow more tolerable with company. The afternoon stretched into early evening conversation, flowing through safer topics. Books, favorite restaurants, the eternal struggle of finding decent coffee in a city full of pretentious cafes. "There's a place in my neighborhood," Sloan said. "Family-owned, been there forever. The coffee is incredible, and they have these pastries I swear I've tried to recreate the recipe and failed every time." "You bake stress." "Baking. It's therapeutic and my neighbors benefit." She smiled, "though lately I've been too tired even for that. End of school year is brutal. Testing season, parent conferences, kids getting restless. When's your break? 3 weeks. And I'm spending it doing absolutely nothing, maybe sleeping for 48 hours straight." "That sounds perfect." Griffin checked his phone and something in his expression shifted. Not alarm, but awareness. "I should go. I told my brother I'd pick up Ivy by 6, and I'm cutting it close." Sloan felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. "Right. Of course." They stood that awkward moment of not knowing how to end the interaction. Handshake seemed too formal, hug too presumptuous. Griffin solved it by simply saying, "This was nice. Really nice. Would you want to do it again? Maybe somewhere with better coffee?" The careful hope in his voice made Sloane's chest tighten. She thought about all the reasons to say no. The debt still hanging over her. The trust she'd spent 2 years rebuilding. The certainty that getting close to someone again would only lead to more wreckage. But she also thought about the way he'd listened when she talked about her students, the pride in his voice when he spoke about his daughter, the absence of performance or pretense in everything he'd said. "Yeah," she heard herself say. "I'd like that." Griffin's smile was worth the risk. "Friday, I know a bookstore that has a cafe attached. Decent coffee, and if conversation runs dry, we can browse." "Sounds perfect." They exchanged numbers, and Sloan watched him leave, walking with the slightly hurried stride of a parent running late. Through the window, she saw him pull out his phone, presumably texting his brother, and the smile on his face made something warm unfold in her chest. She sat back down, staring at her cold coffee. Reese was going to be insufferable about this. Sloan pulled out her phone and sent a quick text. "Fine, you were right. He's nice. Don't get excited." The response came immediately. Too late. Already planning the wedding. Sloan rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress her smile. Friday came faster than expected. Sloan found herself actually putting effort into her appearance. Not a full transformation, but clean jeans, a sweater that fit properly, and some minimal makeup. She drew the line at heels. If Griffin couldn't handle her in boots, this wasn't going anywhere anyway. The bookstore was perfect. Narrow aisles packed with used books, the smell of old paper and binding glue, and a cafe tucked in the back corner with mismatched chairs and folk music playing softly. Griffin was already there browsing the fiction section, and he looked up when she approached. "You found it. Your directions were good. Also, I may have walked past this place 100 times and never noticed it. It's easy to miss, but they have the best mystery section in the city. And Ivy loves the children's corner." He gestured toward the cafe. "Coffee first or browsing coffee?" "Definitely coffee." They ordered. Sloan got a latte that actually tasted like coffee instead of burned despair, and claimed a small table near the window. The conversation picked up where they'd left off, easy and unforced. Sloan told him about the student who'd tried to convince her that dinosaurs were just big chickens, which led to Griffin sharing Ivy's elaborate theory about time travel and pterodactyls. They argued good-naturedly about books discovered. They both loved old movies, and spent 20 minutes debating the best diner in the city. The Galaxy, Sloan insisted. Open 24 hours, massive portions, and the waitress remembers your order after one visit. The Bluebird Griffin countered. Better coffee, actual vegetables in the omelets, and they don't judge you for eating breakfast at midnight. The Galaxy doesn't judge either. They encourage it. We should test this scientifically. Try both and compare. Sloan raised an eyebrow. Is that you asking me out again? Only if the answer is yes. She pretended to consider it. I suppose I could be convinced. For science. They spent another hour browsing the shelves, pulling books and reading passages aloud, arguing about authors and genres. Griffin had surprisingly strong opinions about thriller novels, and Sloan discovered they shared a love for literary fiction that didn't take itself too seriously. When they finally left, the sun was setting, painting the street in orange and gold. Griffin walked her to her car, hands in his pockets, that same slight awkwardness from their first meeting returning. This was really great, he said. I'm glad we did this, me too. Sloan unlocked her car, but didn't get in immediately. So, the diner experiment. When should we conduct this vital research? Are you free? Sunday. Ivy has a play date in the afternoon, so I have a few hours. Sunday works. This time the goodbye was easier. A brief hug, warm and uncomplicated. And then Sloan was driving home with NPR on the radio and a lightness in her chest she hadn't felt in years. Sunday morning, Griffin picked her up at 10. He'd suggested the Bluebird first his choice, so he got to defend it. And when they walked in, Sloan had to admit it was charming. Vintage booths, checkerboard floors, and a waitress who greeted Griffin by name. Regular Hun, the waitress asked. Her nameplate read Maeve O'Connor, and there was a hint of an Irish lilt in her voice that decades in America hadn't quite erased. Please, Maeve, and whatever she wants. Marie turned to Sloan with an appraising look. First time here. First time. He's very confident about our coffee. You should be. Best in the city. Maeve winked. I'll give you 2 a minute with the menus. When she left, Sloan leaned across the table. Regular. How often are you here? Ivy and I come most Sundays. It's our routine. Breakfast, then the park if it's nice, or the library if it's not. Griffin looked slightly embarrassed. I'm a creature of habit. I get that. Routines are good, especially with kids. Sloan scanned the menu. Okay, what's the move here? What should I order to get the full Bluebird experience, the vegetable omelet? Trust me, when the food came, Sloan had to concede he might be right. The omelet was perfect, fluffy, loaded with fresh vegetables seasoned just right. The coffee was excellent. The hash browns were crispy. Okay, she admitted. This is good. Really good, Griffin grinned. Told you. But we still have to try the Galaxy. Objectively. Deal. They ate slowly, talking about everything and nothing. Griffin told her about Ivy's school, the challenges of navigating playdates and birthday parties as a single parent. Sloan shared stories about her classroom, the small victories and ongoing struggles of teaching. Do you like it? Griffin asked. Teaching. I mean, not just tolerate it, but actually like it. Most days, yeah. It's hard dealing with parents who think their kid can do no wrong, budget cuts, standardized testing that doesn't actually measure learning, but the kids make it worth it. When you see something click, when a student who's been struggling finally gets it, Sloan smiled. That's the good stuff. Ivy loves her teacher, Mrs. Patterson. She's strict but fair, and the kids respect her. That's the sweet spot. High expectations. High support. Is that your philosophy? Trying to be. Though some days it's more like everybody stay alive until 3 o'clock and we'll call it a win. Griffin laughed, that genuine sound that made Sloan's chest warm. I feel that. Parenting is basically organized chaos with occasional moments of terror, but you love it. Completely. Ivy is... He paused, searching for words. She's everything. Every good thing I've done, every choice that mattered, it's all been for her. And she's growing up so fast. Sometimes I look at her and can't believe she's the same tiny person I brought home from the hospital. The love in his voice was unmistakable, uncomplicated. Sloane thought about her own childhood, her parents' steady presence, and felt grateful Griffin was giving his daughter that same foundation. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She saved me, honestly. After Rachel died, I didn't know how to keep going. But Ivy needed me, so I figured it out. That's what good parents do. They finished breakfast, and because neither wanted the morning to end, drove to the Galaxy. It was exactly as Sloane had promised, gloriously unpretentious, with a waitress who called everyone hun and portions that could feed a family. Okay, I see the appeal, Griffin admitted, surveying his pancake stack. This is aggressively American in the best way. Right. No pretense, just good food and coffee, strong enough to strip paint. They ate until they were uncomfortably full, laughing about the absurdity of eating 2 breakfasts in one morning. When they finally left, Sloane felt lighter than she had in years. So Griffin said as they stood by her car, "What's the scientific conclusion? Which diner wins?" "I think we need more data, several more trials at minimum. That's very thorough of you. I'm an educator. I believe in rigorous research." Griffin stepped closer, and Sloane's breath caught slightly. "I'm glad Reese forced you into that coffee shop. I'm glad your brother emotionally blackmailed you. Can I see you again?" "Not for diners or science, just because I want to." Sloane's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to protect herself, to maintain distance, to remember what happened last time she let someone in. But Griffin wasn't Troy. He was patient, present, genuinely kind, and she was tired of letting fear make her decisions. "Yes, I'd like that." This time, when he leaned in to hug her goodbye, she let herself relax into it. Let herself believe that maybe, possibly, she could have this. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm. Coffee dates became dinner dates. Dinner dates became long walks through the city bookstores and museums, quiet evenings that stretched until midnight. Griffin was careful never to push, always letting Sloane set the pace, and she found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. She told him about her childhood, her parents who still lived 2 states away, her sister who called weekly to check on her, about the years building her career, the satisfaction of watching students grow, and eventually about the engagement that fell apart, the betrayal that came with it. The worst part wasn't the money, she admitted one evening as they walked through a park near her apartment. It was realizing I'd missed all the signs, that I'd been so focused on planning a future that I didn't see who I was actually with. "That's not your fault." Griffin was firm. "He lied. He manipulated. That's on him, not you." "I know. Intellectually, I know. But it still feels like failure, like I should have known better. We all should have known better about things that already happened. That's the benefit of hindsight." He took her hand, a gesture that had become natural over the past few weeks. "What matters is, you survived it. You rebuilt. You didn't let it destroy you. Some days it felt close, but you're still here, still teaching, still fighting, still willing to have coffee with a stranger your sister set you up with." Griffin squeezed her hand gently. "That takes more courage than you give yourself credit for." Sloane leaned her head against his shoulder, letting herself take comfort in his solidity. "What about you? You've been through worse. How did you keep going?" "Honestly, one day at a time. Some days 1 hour at a time." Griffin was quiet for a moment. "After Rachel died, I thought about giving up. Not permanently, but just checking out. Going through the motions for Ivy, but not really living. And then one day she asked me to play tea party, and I realized if I checked out, she'd notice. She'd grow up with a parent who was physically present but emotionally gone, and Rachel would have hated that. So you chose to be present. I chose to try. Some days I succeeded, some days I failed, but I kept trying." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "That's all we can do, really. Keep trying, keep showing up, keep believing we deserve good things even when experience suggests otherwise." Sloane looked up at him, this man who'd lost everything and still found ways to be gentle, to be patient, to hope. I'm really glad I met you. The feeling is mutual. He kissed her, then soft and careful, and Sloane felt something inside her that had been locked tight for 2 years finally begin to ease open. A month into dating, Griffin introduced her to Ivy. He'd been careful about it, explaining that he didn't bring people into his daughter's life casually, that Ivy had been through enough loss and didn't need to get attached to someone who might disappear. I understand, Sloane had said, meaning it. Whenever you're ready, no pressure. But when he finally asked if she wanted to come to the park with them on Sunday, Sloane felt her nervousness spike. She'd spent years working with kids, was comfortable and confident in her classroom. But meeting Ivy felt different. This mattered in a way that carried weight. Griffin must have sensed her anxiety because he sent her a text the night before. Ivy is excited to meet you. She knows you're a teacher and has approximately 47 questions prepared. Fair warning. Sloane smiled at her phone and typed back, I can handle 47 questions. I've survived parent-teacher conferences. Sunday morning, Sloane met them at Humboldt Park. She spotted Griffin first standing near the playground and then saw the small girl beside him. Ivy had her father's dark hair and eyes, but there was something fierce in her expression, an intensity that suggested she missed nothing. Hi, you must be Ivy, I'm Sloane. Ivy looked her up and down with the serious appraisal of someone much older. Dad says you're a teacher. I am. 3rd grade. I'm in 2nd grade. Do you like teaching most days? Do you like school sometimes? Math is boring, but reading is good. Ivy tilted her head. Do you read chapter books to your class every day after lunch? Right now, we're reading a book about a girl who solves mysteries with her dog. That sounds better than what Mrs. Patterson reads. She picks books about history and they're super long. Griffin hid a smile. Ivy, remember what we talked about, being polite. I am being polite. I didn't say they were boring, just long. Ivy looked back at Sloane. Do you want to go on the swings? I can swing really high now. Want to see? Definitely. They spent the next 2 hours at the playground. Ivy demonstrated her swinging abilities, tested Sloane on dinosaur knowledge, which Sloane failed spectacularly, and insisted on showing off her monkey bar skills. Sloane found herself relaxing, the genuine enthusiasm of a 7-year-old impossible to resist. When Ivy ran off to climb the jungle gym, Griffin moved closer to Sloane. She likes you. How can you tell she's showing off? When she doesn't like someone, she goes silent and stays close to me. He watched his daughter navigate the climbing structure with practiced ease. Thank you for this. I know it's a lot. She's great. Honest, smart, doesn't waste time on nonsense. Sloane smiled. Wonder where she gets that. After the park, they went for ice cream. Ivy ordered chocolate with gummy bears and sprinkles, all the toppings. They're free, and interrogated Sloane about teaching while they ate. Do your students listen to you? Usually. Sometimes I have to use my teacher voice. What's your teacher voice? Sloane demonstrated, dropping her tone slightly. Ivy, I need you to make good choices right now. Ivy's eyes widened. That's scary. It's effective. When Griffin dropped Sloane off that evening, Ivy waved enthusiastically from the back seat. Bye, Miss Sloane. See you next time. Next time. Sloane felt her throat tighten with something that might have been hope. She doesn't say that to everyone, Griffin said quietly. Just so you know. Sloane kissed him quick and soft. I'll see you next time. The weeks turned into months, and Sloane found herself woven into the fabric of Griffin and Ivy's life. Sunday mornings at the diner became a tradition for all three of them. She attended Ivy's school play, helped with homework, learned the names of all 7 stuffed dinosaurs that shared Ivy's bed. Her apartment became familiar to Griffin, her routine something he knew by heart. He learned she stress-baked on Sunday nights, that she graded papers with tea and bad reality TV, that she had strong opinions about Oxford commas, and organized her bookshelf by genre, then alphabetically. It was comfortable, easy, the kind of relationship Sloane had convinced herself didn't exist. And then 4 months in, Griffin's phone rang during dinner at her place. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted. Not quite alarm, but definite tension. "I'm sorry. I have to take this." Of course. He stepped into her hallway, voice low, and Sloane tried not to eavesdrop. But her apartment was small, and she caught fragments. "Not until Wednesday. Tell them I'll call them back." "No, absolutely not. We're not moving the timeline." When he returned, his easy demeanor had cracked slightly. "Sorry about that. Work thing. Everything okay?" "Yeah, just some people can't make decisions without calling me every 5 minutes." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. The joys of management. It was the first time Sloane had seen him stressed about work. He usually kept that part of his life separate, mentioning his job only in the vaguest terms. She'd assumed he preferred to focus on other things when they were together, which she respected. But something in his tone made her pause. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not really. It's just corporate nonsense. Nothing interesting." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Tell me about your week. How did the reading assessment go?" They moved on, but Sloane filed the moment away. A small crack in the carefully maintained separation between Griffin's work life and everything else. She didn't push, not then, but she would remember it later when everything came apart. 2 weeks after that tense phone call, Sloane was eating lunch in the faculty lounge when Reese called. "Make it quick, I've got 20 minutes before bus duty." "Okay, so I was talking to Monica. You remember her from college? She works in finance now. And she mentioned seeing you at a restaurant last week with Griffin Hale." Reese's tone was carefully casual, which immediately put Sloane on alert. "Yeah, we went to that Italian place." "Why, reason?" Just Monica seemed surprised, said she didn't know you were dating anyone, let alone. Reese paused, let alone what Sloane set her pencil down. "Sloane, do you know who Griffin is?" "What do you mean he's the CEO of Hale Construction?" "Has been for 6 years. They're huge tech real estate venture capital. Monica said the company's worth $1.2 billion. The faculty lounge suddenly felt two small walls pressing in. "That's not possible." "Think about it, Sloane. Has he ever actually told you what he does, specifically the phone conversation from 2 weeks ago? The vague references to management and corporate stuff. The way he always steered conversation away from work. He said he wanted to keep things simple, that his job was boring. Running a multi-billion-dollar company is a lot of things, but boring isn't one of them." Reese's tone softened. "I'm sorry. I thought you knew. I figured he told you and you just didn't care about the money stuff, which would be very you. But if he's been hiding it..." After Reese hung up, Sloane sat at her desk staring at the construction paper pumpkins her students had made, trying to process what she'd just learned. The lunch period bell rang and she had to pull herself together, paste on a smile. Pretend her entire understanding of her relationship hadn't just shifted on its axis. She made it through the afternoon on autopilot, teaching fractions and mediating playground disputes, while her mind churned through every conversation she'd had with Griffin, re-examining them through this new lens. He'd never technically lied, but he'd carefully cultivated an impression that was fundamentally dishonest. And the worst part, the part that made her hands shake as she erased the whiteboard after dismissal, was understanding why. He thought she'd want his money. Thought she'd change, become someone else, if she knew, just like Troy had thought she was useful. Malleable, someone whose trust could be exploited. Sloane drove home in silence, declined Reese's follow-up call, and sat on her couch trying to decide whether to confront Griffin or simply disappear. Her phone buzzed. A text from Griffin Ivy wants to know if you can come to her soccer game Saturday. No pressure, but she's been practicing her victory dance specifically to show you. Sloane stared at the message. Sweet, genuine, exactly the kind of thing that had made her fall for him in the first place. She typed back, "We need to talk. Can you come over tonight after Ivy's asleep?" The response took longer than usual. "Of course. Everything okay?" "Just need to talk. I'll be there by 9. The hours until 9 felt endless and too short simultaneously. Sloane changed clothes 3 times, cleaned her already clean apartment, made tea she didn't drink. When the knock finally came, she opened the door to find Griffin looking worried, his hair slightly messy like he'd been running his hands through it. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. "Are you okay?" "Come in." He stepped inside, and Sloane closed the door, leaning against it for support. Griffin stood in the center of her small living room, hands in his pockets, radiating concern. "Sloane, you're scaring me. What happened? Why didn't you tell me you're a CEO?" The color drained from Griffin's face. For a long moment, Griffin just stood there, and Sloane watched him cycle through responses. Denial, deflection, explanation before finally landing on resignation. "How did you find out? Does it matter?" "I guess not." Griffin moved to her couch but didn't sit, just gripped the back of it. "I was going to tell you. I didn't know how or when. How about on our first date when I was telling you about Troy and the debt and everything I've been through? That might have been a good time to mention you're a billionaire. If I told you, then you would have left." Griffin's voice was low, desperate. "You dressed like you did specifically to make me leave. You said so yourself. If you'd known who I was, what I had, you would have assumed I wanted something from you. And instead you lied. I didn't lie. You let me believe something that wasn't true. That's the same thing, Griffin." Sloane's voice cracked, and she hated it. "I told you everything about the debt, about how hard I've worked to rebuild my credit, about eating ramen for 6 months straight because I couldn't afford anything else. And you just let me think we were on equal footing." "We are on equal footing." Griffin's voice was urgent now. "Money doesn't change who I am. It doesn't change what we have. It changes everything." "Don't you see that?" Sloane pushed off the door, pacing. "I spent 4 months thinking you understood what it's like to struggle to rebuild from nothing, thinking we had that in common. But you've never struggled a day in your life, have you?" "That's not fair." "Fair." "You want to talk about fair?" Sloane stopped pacing, facing him directly. "I'm 32 years old, Griffin. I live in a 400-square-foot apartment with appliances from 1987. I buy generic everything because name brand is too expensive. I tutored 3 nights a week for 2 years just to stay afloat. And you thought it was charming. Quaint, I thought you were strong. I thought you were incredible." Griffin's composure was fracturing. "And I still think that. This doesn't change anything about who you are, but it changes who you are. Or at least who I thought you were." Sloane wrapped her arms around herself. "Every time you paid for dinner, was that you being nice or you feeling sorry for me? Every time I suggested somewhere cheap, were you laughing at me? I would never." "Sloane, please." Griffin moved toward her, but she stepped back. "I know I should have told you. I know. But I've spent the last 5 years watching people change when they find out about the money. Women who suddenly laugh at all my jokes, who agree with everything I say, who look at Ivy and see a meal ticket instead of a kid. I just wanted someone to see me. Just me. And I wanted someone to be honest with me." Sloane's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "After what I went through, that was the one thing I needed. Honesty. And you couldn't even give me that. I'm giving it to you now, only because you got caught." The truth of it hung between them, sharp and undeniable. Griffin's expression crumbled, and for a moment he looked lost, this powerful man who commanded boardrooms reduced to someone who didn't know how to fix what he'd broken. "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Maybe there isn't anything to say." Sloane sank onto her couch, suddenly exhausted. I need time to think. To figure out if I can trust you again. How much time, I don't know that either." "Okay." Griffin moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, everything else was real. The way I feel about you, what we built together, that wasn't about money or status or anything else. It was real." Sloane didn't respond, and after a moment, Griffin left. The silence in her apartment felt oppressive. She sat on her couch until midnight, then crawled into bed fully clothed and stared at the ceiling until dawn. Reese called the next morning before Sloane had even dragged herself to the shower. "Please tell me you're okay." "I'm fine. You're lying, but I'll allow it." Reese's voice was gentle. "What happened?" Sloane gave her the abbreviated version, the confrontation, Griffin's explanation. the hollow feeling that had settled in her chest and showed no signs of leaving. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have told you like that. I should have let him explain first. It's not your fault. Better to find out now than 6 months from now, or on our wedding day when I realize I don't actually know my husband. You're not being fair to him. Since when are you defending him?" "Since I saw you happier in the last 4 months than you've been in 4 years. Reese's voice was gentle but firm. "Look, I'm not saying what he did was right. He should have told you. But I also get why he didn't. You literally dressed to scare him off on your first date. If he'd opened with, 'Hey, I'm a billionaire,' you would have run." That's what he said, because it's true, Sloan. You've spent 2 years convinced that everyone wants something from you, building walls so high nobody could possibly get in. Griffin climbed those walls anyway. And yeah, he should have been honest about the climbing gear he was using, but he climbed them. Nobody else even tried. Sloan pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes. "I don't know if I can do this. The money thing. It's not even about the money. It's about trust." "Then tell him that. Have the actual conversation instead of shutting him out." "I asked for time." "I know. I'm just saying don't use that time to build the walls higher." After they hung up, Sloan forced herself to shower and dress. She had school in an hour and 23 kids who needed her functional regardless of her personal drama. She could fall apart later, except later never came. Between teaching and grading and parent emails, Sloan stayed busy enough that she could almost pretend nothing had changed. It was only at night alone in her apartment that the loneliness crept in. Griffin texted once, "I'm here if you want to talk. No pressure, just wanted you to know." Sloan stared at the message for 20 minutes before responding. "Thank you. I just need a little more time." "Take all the time you need." The weekend was harder. Saturdays had become synonymous with Griffin and Ivy breakfast errands, lazy afternoons. Without them, the hours stretched empty and accusing. Sloan threw herself into cleaning into grading papers that didn't need grading, into anything that kept her hands busy and her mind occupied. Sunday morning, she baked bread cookies, a pie nobody would eat. Her neighbors would benefit at least. Monday brought a complication she hadn't anticipated. Sloan was monitoring recess when she spotted the small figure hovering near the fence that separated the elementary playground from the middle school field. Ivy shouldn't be anywhere near Sloan's school. She attended a different elementary across town, which meant this was intentional. Sloan walked over slowly. "Hey, Ivy, what are you doing here?" "My friend's sister goes here. We had a play date." Ivy's expression was solemn too, knowing for 7. "But I wanted to see you. Does your dad know you're here? He's in the parking lot. He said I could say hi, but not to bother you if you're working." Sloan glanced toward the parking lot and caught a glimpse of Griffin's car. He was sitting in the driver's seat, staring straight ahead, clearly giving them space. "I'm not bothering you, right?" Ivy asked, suddenly uncertain. "No, sweetheart, you're not bothering me." Sloan crouched down to Ivy's level. "How are you doing?" "Okay. Dad's been sad, though. He says he's fine, but he does the dishes weird when he's sad. Weird how really quiet. And he stares at them." Ivy kicked at the fence post. "Did you guys have a fight?" Sloan's throat tightened. "Sort of. Grown-up stuff. Are you going to stop being friends I don't know yet?" "I hope you don't. You make Dad smile the real way, not the pretend way he does for other people." Ivy looked up at her with those serious dark eyes. "And you're nice. You don't talk to me like I'm stupid. You're not stupid. You're one of the smartest kids I know. Then you should know Dad didn't mean to make you sad. He messes up sometimes, but he always tries to fix it." Ivy glanced back toward the parking lot. "I should go." He said 5 minutes. Ivy Sloan stopped, unsure what to say. "Thank you for coming to see me." "You're welcome. Bye, Miss Sloan." Sloan watched her run back to the car, watched Griffin's expression shift when she climbed, in relief and worry and hope all tangled together. He didn't look toward the playground, didn't try to catch Sloan's eye, just started the car and drove away. That night, Sloane finally called him. The phone barely rang once before he answered. Sloane. Griffin's voice was rough, like he'd been sleeping or not sleeping. Is everything okay? Can we talk in person? Yes, of course. When? Now. If that works, I'll be there in 20 minutes. He made it in 15. Sloane opened the door to find him in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair disheveled, looking like he'd run out the door the second they'd hung up. Come in. They sat on opposite ends of her couch, the space between them feeling vast. Sloane pulled her knees to her chest, finding courage in the familiar defensive posture. I saw Ivy today. At my school. I know, I'm sorry, she insisted. Said she needed to see you and I couldn't. Griffin stopped. I should have stopped her. That wasn't fair to you. She said you've been doing the dishes weird. A surprised laugh escaped him. She notices everything. She loves you a lot. The feeling is mutual. Griffin's hands twisted together. Sloane. Let me talk first. Please. He nodded. Sloane took a breath, organizing thoughts she'd been circling for days. When I found out about Troy, about the debt, the lies, all of it, the worst part wasn't the money. It was realizing I didn't actually know him, that the person I thought I loved was just a performance, and I swore I'd never let that happen again. Griffin's expression was pained, but he stayed silent. And then I met you. This quiet, genuine guy who seemed as damaged and careful as I was, who understood what it meant to rebuild. And I thought, finally, someone real. Sloane's voice wavered. Finding out you're not who I thought you were, it brought all of that back. Made me feel stupid again. You're not stupid. I know. Logically, I know. But feelings aren't logical. She looked at him directly. The thing is, I spent the last week trying to figure out if you lied to me or if I lied to myself. And I think maybe it's both. What do you mean you weren't honest about your circumstances? That's true, but I also never asked, never pushed. I was so focused on keeping things surface level and safe that I didn't actually try to know you beyond what you volunteered. Sloane uncurled slightly. We both protected ourselves, and maybe that worked for a while, but it can't work long term. So what do we do? I don't know. Part of me wants to walk away because it's easier, safer. But the other part... She stopped, forced herself to continue. The other part knows I'm happier with you than I've been in years. That Ivy makes me laugh. That Sunday morning diners and bad coffee and talking about nothing feel more right than anything else in my life. Griffin's expression shifted, hope creeping in at the edges. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose you either. But I need things to be different going forward. Anything. Tell me what you need. Honesty. Complete honesty. Even when it's uncomfortable or complicated. If something's bothering you, I need to know. If work is stressful, tell me. If you're worried about something, say it. Sloane met his eyes, and I'll do the same. No more protecting each other from reality. Deal. Absolutely. And I need you to understand that your money makes me uncomfortable. Not because I want it, but because of the power imbalance it creates. You can buy anything, solve any problem. I'm still paying off debt and budgeting for groceries. That gap, it matters. Griffin nodded slowly. Okay. How do we navigate that? I don't know yet. But we figure it out together. Not with you making decisions for me or trying to fix things I didn't ask you to fix. I can do that. Griffin shifted slightly closer. Is it okay if I explain my side? Why I didn't tell you? Yeah. He gathered his thoughts, and Sloane saw the careful control he'd maintained for weeks finally crack open. After Rachel died, people came out of nowhere. Distant relatives I'd never met, friends who suddenly needed help, women who saw a widower with money and thought they could step in. It was relentless, and I was grieving, barely functional, trying to keep Ivy alive and safe while my entire world fell apart. Sloane's anger softened slightly, though she kept it in check. I eventually learned to recognize the pattern. The shift that happened when people found out about the money, the way conversations changed, the way they looked at me differently. So, I started keeping it private, downplaying it. And then when I met you, he paused. You were so determined not to be impressed, so committed to staying guarded. And I thought if I told you, you'd put me in the same category as Troy, someone using resources to manipulate. I might have, Sloane admitted. Right. So I told myself I'd wait until you trusted me, until what we had was solid enough that the money wouldn't matter. But the longer I waited, the harder it got to bring up, and the worse the lie became. It wasn't a lie exactly, but it wasn't truth either. No, it wasn't. Griffin's voice was raw. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you enough to be honest. Should have given you the choice instead of making it for you. They sat in silence for a long moment, Sloane processing his words, weighing them against her own experience, her own fear. Okay. 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 We try again, but differently this time. Actually honest. The relief on Griffin's face was almost painful to witness. Thank you. I promise I'll... Don't promise perfection. Just promise effort. That's all I can offer too. Then effort. I promise effort. Sloane uncurled completely, and Griffin closed the distance between them. The hug was careful at first, tentative, and then Sloane felt herself relax into it, breathing in the familiar scent of his laundry detergent and something underneath that was just him. I missed you, she whispered against his shoulder. I missed you too. So much. They stayed like that for a long time, neither wanting to let go, both aware of how close they'd come to losing this. When they finally pulled apart, Griffin's expression was serious. Can I tell you something else? Full honesty. Please. There's a work thing coming up. A gala. It's in 2 weeks, and normally I skip them, but this year my company is being honored, and I have to attend. He took her hand. I'd like you to come with me, but I want you to understand what you're signing up for. It's going to be formal. There will be press, and people are going to ask questions about who you are. Sloane's stomach dropped. That's a lot. I know, and if you're not ready, I completely understand. But I also don't want to hide you. Don't want to hide us. What about Ivy? Won't she be there? No, she's spending that weekend with my brother and his family. This is strictly adult territory. Boring speeches and expensive wine. Sloane thought about it, about cameras and questions and the judgment of people who would see her cheap dress and clearance shoes, about stepping into a world that wasn't hers and never would be. But she also thought about Griffin's expression, the vulnerability in his request, the fact that he was asking, not assuming. Okay, I'll go. But I'm going to need help with the dress code. I'm guessing my teacher wardrobe isn't black tie appropriate. Griffin laughed, real and warm. We'll figure it out together. Together, Sloane agreed, and for the first time in a week, the tightness in her chest finally eased. The dress arrived 3 days before the gala, delivered to Sloane's classroom during her lunch break by a courier who looked deeply uncomfortable navigating elementary school hallways. The box was sleek black, tied with silver ribbon, and when Sloane opened it in the privacy of her storage closet, she found a gown that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Deep navy silk that shimmered like water, simple lines that wouldn't look cheap in photographs, and a handwritten note from Griffin saw this, and thought of you. If you hate it, we'll find something else. No pressure. Sloane held the dress against herself, catching her reflection in the tiny mirror she kept for checking her appearance before parent meetings. The woman looking back seemed like a stranger, someone who might actually belong at a billionaire's gala instead of surrounded by construction paper and spelling tests. Her phone buzzed. Reese, because of course Reese had developed some kind of sister telepathy about dramatic moments. Please tell me you're not spiraling. I'm holding a dress that costs more than my car. First of all, your car cost $800 and sounds like it's dying every time you start it. Second, is the dress hideous? It's beautiful. That's the problem. How is that a problem? Because I'm going to show up at this thing and everyone's going to know I don't belong there. They're going to look at me and see exactly what I am, a broke teacher who's dating way out of her league. First of all, you're not broke. You're financially recovering, which is different. Second, Griffin isn't out of your league. Money doesn't determine worth, and you know that. Reese's voice softened. What's really going on? I'm scared. The money thing was abstract before, something we could ignore in diners and bookstores. But this showing up at his world, meeting his people, it makes it real. And I don't know if I can handle real. You've handled worse, have I? Because right now it feels like I'm setting myself up for the exact same humiliation all over again, except this time it'll be public. With cameras. So don't go. Sloane blinked. What don't go? If it's too much, tell Griffin you're not ready. He'll understand. Reese paused. But if you do go, stop acting like you're less than him. You're a grown woman with a career you're good at who's been through hell and came out stronger. That's worth more than any bank account. After they hung up, Sloane sat in her storage closet for another 10 minutes, surrounded by art supplies and the faint smell of tempera paint, trying to find that strength Reese insisted she had. That evening, Griffin came over with takeout and found her on the couch with the dress box beside her unopened since she'd brought it home. You hate it. I don't hate it. It's perfect. That's the problem. Griffin sat beside her, careful not to disturb the box. Talk to me. I'm terrified of the gala of your world, of everyone looking at me and knowing I don't fit. You fit with me. That's all that matters. Is it? Because you've spent 5 years in that world, you know those people, and I'm going to show up and they're going to see right through me. See through you to what Griffin's voice was gentle but firm, to the fact that you're intelligent, kind, and don't take anyone's crap, that you work harder than most of them ever have, that you chose a career helping kids instead of chasing money. They're going to see someone who's with you for your wallet. Some of them will think that no matter what, they thought it about Rachel and she came from money herself. Griffin took Sloane's hand. I'm not asking you to impress them or perform for them. I'm asking you to stand beside me for one evening so I don't have to face it alone. Sloane looked at him, really looked, and saw past the calm exterior to the tension underneath. You hate these things. I despise them. The false conversations, the networking, the performance. But it's part of the job, and this year I can't skip it. He squeezed her hand. Having you there would make it bearable, but if you're not ready, I understand. What do I even talk to these people about? The truth. You're a teacher. If they ask what you do, tell them. If they ask how we met, tell them your sister set us up. You don't need to be anyone but yourself. Myself in a dress that costs more than I make in a month. The dress is just fabric. You make it matter, not the other way around. Griffin pulled her close. And for the record, you could show up in jeans and still be the most interesting person in that room. Sloane let herself lean into him, drawing strength from his steadiness. Okay, I'll go. But if I panic and hide in the bathroom all night, you have to come find me. Deal. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation that felt both excessive and necessary. Reese insisted on coming over to help with hair and makeup, arriving with enough supplies to stock a salon. I don't even know what half of this stuff is, Sloane protested, eyeing the array of products spread across her bathroom counter. That's why I'm here. Sit down and trust me. The last time you said that, I ended up with purple hair for a month. We were 19 and it looked cool. Now sit. Sloane sat and Reese went to work with the focused intensity of a surgeon. An hour later, Sloane barely recognized herself. Her hair was swept into something elegant and effortless looking that had probably taken real effort. Her makeup was subtle but polished, and when she finally put on the dress, even Reese went quiet. Wow, Sloane, you look like you belong in that dress, like you were made for it. Reese's eyes were suspiciously bright. The doorbell rang at exactly 7, and Sloane's stomach dropped through the floor. Reese squeezed her shoulder before going to answer it, leaving Sloane staring at herself in the full-length mirror Reese had insisted on bringing over. She heard Griffin's voice in the living room, heard Reese saying something teasing, and then footsteps approaching. Sloane turned from the mirror as Griffin appeared in the doorway of her bedroom, wearing a tuxedo that made her breath catch. He stopped mid-step, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. You're staring. I know. I can't. Griffin cleared his throat. You look incredible. You clean up pretty well yourself. He crossed to her slowly, like approaching something precious he was afraid to break. I know I said the dress didn't matter, but I was wrong. You make that dress extraordinary. Sloane felt heat rise in her cheeks. Smooth talker, honest talker. He offered his arm. Ready. Absolutely not. Let's go anyway. The car Griffin had sent was sleek and black, with a driver who offered a polite greeting before shutting them into the leather-scented interior. As they pulled away from Sloane's apartment building, she watched the familiar street slide past and felt like she was leaving her real life behind. You're nervous. Griffin's hand found hers. Is it that obvious? Only to me. You do this thing where you press your lips together when you're anxious. Great. Now I'm going to be self-conscious about my lips too. Don't be. I like your lips. He smiled. Sloane, if at any point tonight you want to leave, we leave. No questions, no judgment. Just say the word. The venue was a historic hotel downtown, all marble columns and glittering chandeliers, with a red carpet leading to the entrance where photographers were already stationed. Sloane's heart hammered against her ribs as their car pulled up. Breathe. We'll go straight inside. The photos are optional, but as soon as they stepped out, cameras flashed. Griffin kept his hand on the small of Sloane's back, steady and grounding, as they navigated the carpet. Sloane heard her name being called, reporters who'd apparently done their research, and questions being shouted about their relationship. Mr. Hale, who's your date? How long have you been together? Miss Bennett, what do you do? Griffin ignored all of it, keeping them moving toward the entrance. But Sloane caught sight of herself on one photographer's digital display as they passed. The image showed a poised woman in a stunning dress, Griffin's hand protective at her back, both of them looking like they belonged exactly where they were. Maybe Reese had been right. Maybe the dress did matter, at least for tonight. Inside was even more overwhelming. The ballroom was massive round tables draped in white linen surrounding a dance floor with a stage at the far end and bars stationed at strategic intervals. The room was already half full of people who looked like they'd stepped from the pages of a fashion magazine. Women in designer gowns, men in tuxedos that fit like they'd been custom-made. Everyone radiating wealth and confidence. Griffin, a man in his 50s, approached, hand extended. Good to see you finally made it to one of these things. Howard. Griffin shook his hand. This is Sloane Bennett, Sloane Howard Perkins. He runs the development division. Howard turned his assessing gaze on Sloane. Pleasure. What brings you into Griffin's orbit? Blind date, actually. My sister's persistent. Howard laughed. Good for her. Griffin here has turned down more setups than I can count. You must be special. Or stubborn enough to stick around despite his best efforts at sabotage. Howard's amusement was genuine. They moved through the room, Griffin introducing her to various colleagues and business associates. Sloane quickly developed a script teacher, 3rd grade. Yes, she enjoyed it. No, she'd never considered private school. Most people were polite. Some were genuinely interested. And a few looked at her like they were doing calculations in their heads about net worth and social climbing. Those looks made Sloane's spine straighten. She wasn't here to prove anything to them. She was here for Griffin, and that was enough. It was when they reached their assigned table that things got complicated. Already seated were Griffin's brother Garrett with his wife Bryn, 2 couples Sloane didn't recognize, and an older woman wearing diamonds that could probably fund Sloane's school's art program for a decade. Griffin, darling. The woman stood to offer her cheek for a kiss. I was beginning to think you'd skip this year, too. Hello, Mother. Griffin's tone was polite, but cool. This is Sloane Bennett, Sloane Vivian Hale. My mother. Sloane's stomach dropped. Griffin's mother. He'd mentioned her exactly once in passing, saying only that she lived in Connecticut, and they weren't particularly close. Looking at Vivian, now perfectly coiffed silver hair expression of polite interest, masking sharp evaluation, Sloane understood why. How lovely to meet you. Vivian extended a hand. Her grip was firm, her gaze sharper. Griffin didn't mention he was bringing anyone. Last-minute decision. Griffin pulled out Sloane's chair. As they sat, Garrett leaned over with a warm smile. Ignore Mother. She's impossible to please. I'm Garrett, the better-looking brother, and this is my wife, Bryn. Bryn rolled her eyes but smiled. Don't mind him. He's delusional. It's nice to meet you, Sloane. The dinner service began, courses appearing and disappearing with choreographed precision. Sloane focused on the safe topics, talked with Bryn about her work in non-profit development, listened to Garrett's stories about his kids, answered polite questions about teaching, but she felt Vivian's gaze returning to her, repeatedly assessing, judging, finding her wanting. It was halfway through the main course when Vivian finally struck. So Sloane, her voice carrying across the table conversation. How did you and Griffin really meet? The blind date story is charming, but I'm curious about the details. That is how we met. My sister Reese is friends with Garrett. She set us up. How enterprising of her. Vivian's smile didn't reach her eyes. And you're a public school teacher? Elementary 3rd grade. How fulfilling that must be, though I imagine the salary is quite modest. The implication was clear. Sloane felt Griffin tense beside her, but she put a hand on his knee under the table, a silent request to let her handle this. The salary is modest, but I found that actual fulfillment is worth more than a paycheck, though I understand that's a difficult concept for some people to grasp. Vivian's eyes narrowed slightly. Indeed. Tell me, dear, what attracted you to my son? I'm sure his personality is quite compelling. There it was, the accusation delivered with a smile wrapped in politeness. Sloane set down her fork carefully. What attracted me to Griffin was his honesty, his dedication to his daughter, the way he listens when people talk instead of waiting for his turn to speak. The fact that he values character over credentials. She met Vivian's gaze directly. Though if I'm being completely honest, I didn't know who he was when we met. I showed up to that blind date in my worst clothes specifically to scare him off because I was tired of being disappointed by people. The table had gone quiet, everyone watching. How refreshing. Vivian's tone suggested otherwise. And when you discovered his circumstances, you decided to stay. How convenient, Mother Griffin started, but Sloane squeezed his knee again. Actually, when I found out, I almost left because I'd spent 2 years rebuilding my life after my ex-fiancé destroyed my credit, and I wasn't interested in being with someone who couldn't be honest with me. Sloane's voice was steady, calm. Griffin not telling me who he was initially, that was a problem, but the fact that he was willing to have the hard conversation to actually work through it instead of throwing money at it. That's what made me stay. Vivian opened her mouth, but Garrett cut in. I like her. She's got spine. About time someone stood up to you, Mother. I'm simply looking out for my son's interests. My interests are my own concern. Griffin's voice was quiet but carrying absolute authority. And Sloane has been nothing but honest with me from the beginning. More honest than most people in this room would know how to be. Vivian's expression hardened. Griffin, I understand you're lonely. Raising Ivy alone can't be easy, but bringing someone into your life, into her life, requires discernment. And I'm not convinced. With respect, Vivian Sloane interrupted, surprised by her own boldness. Your opinion on my relationship with Griffin isn't actually relevant. What's relevant is that he's happy that Ivy is happy that we're building something real based on mutual respect and genuine affection. She paused. But since we're being direct, let me save you the investigation I'm sure you're planning. Yes, I have debt. Yes, I live in a tiny apartment. Yes, I shop at thrift stores and clip coupons. And no, I'm not with Griffin for his money. I'm with him because he makes me laugh, because he challenges me to be better, and because he's the first person in years who's made me believe I deserve good things. The silence at the table was absolute. Vivian looked like she'd been slapped. Garrett was grinning openly, and Griffin's hand found Sloane's under the table, squeezing tight. Well, Bryn said brightly, breaking the tension, I think that deserves a toast to honesty and good relationships. Glasses were raised, though Vivian's participation was notably reluctant. The conversation shifted to safer topics, but Sloane could feel the weight of what had just happened settling over the table. When dinner finally ended and people began moving toward the bar or the dance floor, Griffin pulled Sloane aside. "I'm so sorry. I should have warned you about her. She's protective." "I get it, but I think I just burned that bridge pretty thoroughly. You were magnificent, completely, perfectly magnificent." Griffin cupped her face gently. "I know that took courage. You shouldn't have had to use." "Yeah, well, I'm done letting people make me feel small." Sloane managed to smile, though. "I might need that drink now. Coming right up." At the bar, Sloane ordered whiskey straight because wine felt too delicate for how she was feeling, and tried to process what had just happened. She'd confronted Griffin's mother at a gala in front of witnesses. Her hands were shaking slightly as she lifted the glass. That was quite a performance. Sloane turned to find a woman in her 40s, elegant in emerald green, watching her with amusement. "I'm not sure performance is the right word." "Fair enough. Truth-telling, then. I'm Cordelia Ashford. I run the foundation that's being honored tonight." She extended her hand. "And I've been wanting Vivian Hale taken down a peg for about 15 years. Thank you for that." Sloane shook her hand, surprised. "I wasn't trying to cause a scene. No, you were trying to survive one. There's a difference." Cordelia sipped her own drink. "Vivian specializes in making people feel inadequate. It's her superpower. The fact that you didn't crumble is impressive. I crumbled a little, but you recovered. That's what counts." Cordelia studied her thoughtfully. "You're a teacher 3rd grade. My daughter's in 3rd grade. Hates it, actually. Says her teacher makes learning boring." Cordelia grimaced. "We're looking at other options for next year, but the private schools around here are insufferable. Too focused on test scores and college prep for 8-year-olds. Sloane found herself relaxing slightly. That's the eternal struggle. Balancing actual education with the metrics people use to judge it. "Do you do any private tutoring?" "My daughter needs someone who can make learning interesting again. Help her remember why she used to love school." "I do actually, though my rate is probably not what you're used to." "I don't care about the rate. I care about results." Cordelia pulled out her phone. "Can I get your number? I'd love to discuss this further away from all this noise." They exchanged information, and Cordelia excused herself to network, leaving Sloane slightly dazed. She'd just been confronted by Griffin's mother and potentially gained a new student in the span of 30 minutes. The evening was surreal. Griffin found her a few minutes later, concern evident. "You okay?" "Yeah." "Surprisingly." "Yeah." Sloane finished her whiskey. "Your mother hates me. My mother hates everyone who makes her question her worldview. You're in good company." He pulled her toward the dance floor as music started. "Dance with me, please. I need one normal moment in all this chaos." The music was slow classical, and Sloane let Griffin lead her onto the floor. She wasn't a great dancer, had never taken lessons, never had occasion to, but Griffin made it easy, keeping her close and moving in simple patterns. "I meant what I said earlier," Sloane murmured against his shoulder. "About why I'm with you. In case you were wondering." "I wasn't wondering. But it's good to hear anyway." Griffin's hand tightened on her waist. "I love you, Sloane. I should have said it before now, but I was afraid of scaring you off. But after tonight, after watching you stand up to my mother with more grace and strength than I've ever managed, I love you. Completely." Sloane's breath caught. She pulled back enough to see his face found nothing but sincerity there. "I love you too, even though you have terrible taste in family members." He laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. "I can't argue with that." They danced through 2 more songs, and for a while Sloane forgot about Vivian's judgment about the cameras outside, about everything except the feeling of Griffin's arms around her, and the certainty that this right here was worth fighting for. It was only when they finally left the dance floor that reality reasserted itself. Vivian was holding court near the bar, and though Sloane couldn't hear what she was saying, the glances being thrown in their direction suggested it wasn't complimentary. "Ignore her." Griffin followed Sloane's gaze. She thrives on attention. Denying her that is the best revenge. But throughout the rest of the evening, Sloane felt the weight of those stares, those whispered conversations. She smiled through the speeches, applauded at appropriate moments, made small talk with people whose names she forgot immediately. And all the while she felt the gulf between Griffin's world and hers widening. When they finally escaped to the car, well past midnight, Sloane's face hurt from maintaining her smile, and her feet were screaming from heels she wasn't used to wearing. "Thank you," Griffin spoke as they pulled away from the hotel. "For coming tonight. For handling my mother. For everything. Your mother is a piece of work. That's putting it mildly. She's been trying to control my life since I took over the company. Thinks she knows better than I do about everything from business decisions to personal relationships. She really hates that I'm not wealthy. She hates that she can't predict or control you. Money is just the excuse." Griffin loosened his bow tie, looking exhausted. "For what it's worth, everyone else loved you. Garrett has already texted me 3 times saying I'd be an idiot to let you go. Smart man, your brother." They rode in comfortable silence for a while before Griffin spoke again. "I know tonight was hard, probably confirmed every fear you had about my world, but I need you to know that's not my world. It's a world I have to exist in sometimes, but it's not who I am. I know, but it's part of your life, part of what being with you means, and I'm not sure I'm equipped for it. You handled yourself better than most people who've been navigating that world for decades. I got through one night. That doesn't mean I can do it regularly." Sloane looked out the window at the city passing by. "Your mother asked what attracted me to you, and I gave her a good answer. A true answer. But I didn't tell her the whole truth. What's the whole truth? That I'm terrified. That every time I let myself get comfortable with us, something reminds me of how different our lives are, and I don't know how to bridge that gap." Griffin was quiet for a long moment. What if we don't try to bridge it? What if we just accept that we come from different places and build something new that's ours? Not my world, or your world, but our world. Is that possible? I don't know. But I'd like to try. He took her hand. "We don't have to figure it all out tonight. We just have to decide if we want to keep trying." Sloane looked at their intertwined hands, his familiar and steady hers still shaking slightly from adrenaline and fear and hope. "I want to keep trying. Then that's enough for now." When the car pulled up to Sloane's building, Griffin walked her to her door, despite the late hour. On her front step, surrounded by the familiar smell of her neighbor's cooking and the distant sound of traffic, Sloane felt herself returning to reality. Tonight was a lot. It was. "I'm sorry it had to be." "Don't be. It was necessary. I needed to see that part of your life even if it was terrifying." She found her keys but didn't immediately unlock the door. "Griffin, when you said you loved me, did you mean it?" "Every word." "Good. Because I meant it too. And I think that's going to have to be enough to get us through whatever comes next." He kissed her, then gentle and thorough, and Sloane let herself sink into it, let herself believe that love might actually be enough. When she finally went inside and closed the door, she leaned against it, the events of the evening washing over her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Reese. "How did it go? Are you okay? Do I need to come over with ice cream and murder plans?" Sloane smiled and typed back, "Survived. Told his mother off. He told me he loves me. I told him I love him. Currently processing everything." The response was immediate. "What? Calling you now?" Sloane let it go to voicemail. She'd talk to Reese tomorrow, would process everything with her sister's help. But tonight, she just wanted to hold on to the feeling of Griffin's arms around her, his steady presence, the certainty that whatever challenges they faced, they'd face them together. She changed out of the beautiful dress, carefully hanging it in her closet, where it looked absurdly out of place among her teacher clothes and thrift store finds. but she liked having it there, a reminder that she could exist in both worlds when necessary. As she finally crawled into bed exhausted, but strangely hopeful, Sloane's phone lit up with one last message from Griffin Sleep Well. "I'll call you tomorrow. Thank you for tonight, for everything. I love you." She fell asleep, smiling, the fears and doubts still present but quieter now, drowned out by something stronger. The morning after the gala, Sloane woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Reese demanding details, but there were also messages from numbers she didn't recognize, and 3 voicemails from reporters asking for comment on her relationship with Griffin Hale. She stared at her phone in disbelief, stomach sinking, as she scrolled through gossip site links Reese had forwarded. The photos from the red carpet had already made their rounds online, accompanied by speculation about who she was, where she'd come from, and what her real motives were. One headline read, "Mystery Woman Crashes. Hale Industries Gala." Another, "Elementary Teacher Lands Billionaire Fairy Tale or Fortune Hunter." Sloane's hands shook as she clicked through the articles, each one more invasive than the last. Someone had found her school's website, her LinkedIn profile, even her college graduation photo. The comment sections were brutal, filled with strangers dissecting her appearance, her background, her worthiness. Her phone rang. "Griffin, don't read the articles." His voice was urgent. "Sloane, I'm so sorry. I should have prepared you for this. They found my school, Griffin. They have pictures of the building where I work. What if they show up? What if they bother my students?" "They won't. I'm having my team handle it. We'll issue a statement asking for privacy, and I've already contacted your principal to arrange security if needed." "You contacted my principal?" Sloane's voice rose. "Without asking me." Griffin paused. "You're right. I should have called you first. I'm sorry. I just wanted to protect you." Sloane sat on her bed, still in her pajamas, feeling the walls of her carefully rebuilt life cracking. "I can't do this, Griffin. I can't have strangers analyzing my life, reporters calling me, people showing up at my workplace." I know, and I'm handling it. Just give me a few hours to do what make them magically forget I exist, to make them lose interest. There's already another story breaking about a tech merger. By tomorrow will be old news." But it wasn't old news by tomorrow. 3 days later, Sloane was still getting stopped by other teachers asking if she was really dating Griffin Hale, still finding her photo on social media, with increasingly creative captions, still fielding questions from parents during pickup. The worst part was the change in how people looked at her. Other teachers who'd been friendly now seemed distant, like they weren't sure how to talk to someone who'd crossed into a different economic stratosphere. Parents who'd barely noticed her before now lingered during drop-off, asking invasive questions disguised as friendly interest. Even her students picked up on something. On Thursday, one of her 8-year-olds asked, during quiet reading time, "Miss Bennett, are you going to quit teaching and be rich now?" Sloane looked up from the essay she was grading, startled. "What? No. Why would you think that? My mom said you're dating a billionaire. She said you probably won't want to teach anymore once you have all that money." The other students' heads popped up from their books, suddenly very interested in this conversation. Sloane set down her pen carefully. "I love teaching, and I'm not going anywhere. Being in a relationship doesn't change who I am or what I do. It just means I have someone special in my life, like your parents have each other. But my mom said, I'm sure your mom means well, but she doesn't know everything about my life. Nobody does except Mamishi." Sloane looked around at all her students. "You guys are stuck with me until June at minimum, possibly longer if you're unlucky." That got a few laughs and the tension broke. But after school, Sloane sat at her desk fighting tears of frustration. This was her sanctuary, her place where she was just Miss Bennett, who taught fractions and read chapter books and helped kids learn to be kind. Now, even that was infected with speculation and judgment. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Cordelia Ashford from the gala. I'd still love to talk about tutoring my daughter. Are you free this weekend?" Sloane stared at the message. Normal professional treating her like an actual person instead of a tabloid curiosity. She typed back, "Saturday afternoon works. Want to meet at a coffee shop to discuss?" The response came quickly. "Perfect. I'll send you the address. At least something good might come from the gala nightmare." That evening, Griffin came over with dinner and found Sloane stress baking. Her tiny kitchen was covered in cooling racks holding cookies, brownies, and what looked like the beginning of a pie crust. Bad day. "My students asked if I was quitting teaching to be rich. Parents are treating me like I'm either a gold digger or a curiosity. And I got 3 more calls from reporters today." Sloane viciously rolled out pie dough. "So yeah, bad day." Griffin set down the takeout bags and came to stand beside her. "What can I do?" "Nothing. That's the problem. You can't fix this. I can try. I can have my lawyers send cease and desist letters to the publications, can hire security for your school. That will make it worse." Sloane dropped the rolling pin with a clatter. "Don't you see? Every time you swoop in with lawyers and security and solutions, it just proves what everyone already thinks. That I need you. That I can't handle my own life. That I'm with you because you can fix everything. That's not what I think. Maybe not. But it's what everyone else thinks. And honestly, Griffin, sometimes I wonder if they're right. Because look at us. You're trying to protect me with resources I could never access on my own. You're solving problems I can't solve. How is that a partnership? How is that equal?" Griffin was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want me to do?" "I don't know. I need to handle some things myself. Need to prove I can survive this without you throwing money at it." "Okay. Then tell me what you need from me. Not what I can fix, but what you actually need." Sloane looked at him. This man who was trying so hard but couldn't quite understand the fundamental imbalance between them. "I need you to trust that I can handle my own problems. I need you to ask before you make decisions that affect my life. And I need you to understand that sometimes the right thing to do is nothing." "I can do that. I'll do better." Griffin reached for her hand. "But you have to tell me when I'm overstepping. I can't read your mind." "Fair enough." They ate dinner mostly in silence, the unspoken tension filling Sloane's small apartment. When Griffin left around 9, the goodbye felt strained, and Sloane found herself wondering how many more of these conversations they could survive before something broke permanently. Saturday's meeting with Cordelia was a welcome distraction. The coffee shop was quiet, tucked away in a neighborhood that catered to locals rather than tourists, and Cordelia arrived exactly on time with a bright-eyed girl who looked nothing like Sloane had expected. "This is Piper." Cordelia gestured to her daughter. "Piper, this is Miss Bennett. She's the teacher I told you about." Piper regarded Sloane with serious brown eyes. "Do you make learning boring?" "I try not to. But sometimes the subjects are naturally boring and we just have to get through them." Sloane smiled. "What do you find boring about school?" "Everything. We just do worksheets all day. Mrs. Patterson says we have to practice for tests. That does sound boring. What do you like to learn about when you're not at school? Space and bugs and how things work." Sloane and Cordelia spent the next hour discussing Piper's struggles, her strengths, and what Cordelia hoped to accomplish with tutoring. By the end, they had agreed on twice-weekly sessions focused on making learning engaging again, rather than just drilling test skills. "Thank you." Cordelia gathered their things. "Piper needs someone who remembers education is supposed to be interesting. I appreciate the opportunity. And the trust." Cordelia paused, then said quietly, "For what it's worth, I think you handled the gala perfectly. Vivian Hale is a bully, and bullies only understand strength. You showed strength. I'm not sure strength is the right word. Desperation, maybe. Sometimes they're the same thing." Cordelia smiled. "I'll see you Tuesday for our first session." After they left, Sloane sat for a while longer, feeling something settle in her chest. This was what she needed. Work that was hers, accomplishments that had nothing to do with who she was dating. Proof that she existed independent of Griffin's world. Her phone rang. Reese finally catching her at a moment she could talk. Okay, I've given you almost a week to process, but I need details, all of them. Starting with the part where you told Griffin's mother off and ending with the I love yous. Sloane laughed despite herself. It's a long story. I have time. Derek's watching the kids talk. So Sloane did, pouring out everything from the gala to the media storm to her fight with Griffin about independence and fixing problems. Reese listened without interrupting, which was unusual enough that Sloane knew her sister was genuinely concerned. Okay. First, I'm proud of you for standing up to Vivian. Second, the media thing sucks, but it'll blow over. Third, and most important, do you actually want to be with Griffin, or are you just trying to prove you can handle his world? I want to be with him. I love him. But I don't know if love is enough when our lives are this different. He can't help trying to fix things. It's who he is. And I can't help feeling suffocated by it because I spent 2 years learning to fix my own problems. Sloane's voice cracked. We're both doing our best and it still feels impossible. Nothing worth having is easy, Sloane. You know that. Yeah, but there's difficult, and then there's fundamentally incompatible. Which do you think this is? Sloane didn't have an answer. The following Tuesday, she started tutoring Piper and found genuine joy in watching the girl's face light up when they turned math problems into space calculations and reading comprehension into researching actual insects. This was what she was good at. This was where she belonged. Griffin noticed the change in her mood, the way she seemed lighter after tutoring sessions. Sophie's lucky to have you. Her name is Piper, and I'm lucky to have the work. It reminds me who I am outside of all the noise. You've always known who you are. That's one of the things I love about you. Have I? Because lately I feel like I'm losing myself trying to fit into your world while maintaining my own. Sloane lowered her voice, mindful of Ivy's presence at the kitchen table doing homework. I don't know how to be both people. The teacher who clips coupons and the woman who attends galas. You don't have to be both. You can just be you. But your life requires both, and I'm not sure I can sustain that. Ivy looked up from her homework. Are you guys fighting? No, sweetheart. Griffin's response was quick. Just talking about grown-up stuff. You look like you're fighting. You have the same faces Dad and I make when we disagree about bedtime. Sloane couldn't help but smile. We're not fighting, we're just trying to figure some things out. Oh. Okay. Ivy went back to her math problems, apparently satisfied. But later, after Ivy was in bed and Sloane was gathering her things to leave, Griffin stopped her at the door. Are we okay? Because it feels like we're not okay. I don't know. I want us to be okay, but I'm struggling with this, Griffin. With the attention, with the money. With feeling like I'm always trying to catch up to where you are. You're not catching up. We're just in different places. That doesn't mean one is better than the other. Doesn't it, though? You can solve problems I can't even afford to have. You live in a world I can visit, but never truly belong to. How do we build a future on that foundation? The same way we built what we have now. One day at a time, being honest with each other, choosing to stay even when it's hard. Sloane wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that love and commitment were enough to bridge the gap between their realities. But doubt had taken root, fed by every awkward interaction, every judgment from strangers, every reminder that she and Griffin came from fundamentally different worlds. I need some time. Not a break. Just space to think. To figure out if I can actually do this long term. Griffin's face fell, but he nodded. How much time, I don't know. A week, maybe 2. Okay. But Sloane, he caught her hand. I love you. That hasn't changed. Whatever you need to figure out, I'll wait. What if what I figure out is that this can't work? Then at least we'll know. At least we'll have tried. He pulled her close, and Sloane let herself lean into him one more time. But I'm hoping you'll figure out something different. The next 2 weeks were some of the hardest of Sloane's life. She threw herself into teaching, into tutoring Piper, into anything that kept her busy and distracted. Reese checked in daily, offering support without pushing. Griffin texted occasionally, nothing heavy, just small updates about Ivy or funny things that happened at work, and Sloane appreciated the space he was giving her. But Ivy was another story. 10 days into Sloane's self-imposed thinking period, Sloane's phone rang at 7 in the morning. Griffin's number. Sloane. His voice was strained. "I'm sorry to call so early, but Ivy, she's been asking about you. Whether you're coming back. And last night she cried herself to sleep because she thinks she did something wrong." Sloane's heart clenched. Oh, God. Griffin. "I never wanted. I know you didn't. But she's 7 and she doesn't understand why you're suddenly not here anymore." He took a shaky breath. "I'm not trying to pressure you. You asked for time and you deserve it. I just thought you should know she's hurting. Can I talk to her? She's at school already, but..." Griffin paused. "Would you be willing to see her? Maybe this weekend, just you and her. Not me, so she knows this isn't about her." "Yeah, of course. Saturday works. I'll drop her at the park near your place around 10 if that's okay." "That's perfect. Thank you for telling me." After they hung up, Sloane sat on her couch, guilt washing over her. She'd been so focused on her own confusion, her own fears, that she hadn't fully considered how this would affect Ivy. A 7-year-old who'd already lost her mother and was now watching another woman she cared about disappear. Saturday morning arrived cold and clear. Sloane got to Humboldt Park early, claimed a bench with a view of the playground, and waited. At exactly 10, Griffin's car pulled up and Ivy climbed out bundled in a purple winter coat. She spotted Sloane immediately and ran over, then stopped a few feet away, suddenly uncertain. "Hi, Ivy." "Hi. Want to sit?" Ivy climbed onto the bench, leaving space between them. For a moment, neither spoke. "Your dad told me you've been worried." Ivy nodded, staring at her hands. "Did I do something wrong?" "No. God, no." Sloane turned to face her. "Ivy, you didn't do anything wrong. This has nothing to do with you." "Then why did you leave?" "I didn't leave. I just needed some time to think about grown-up stuff." What stuff? Sloane chose her words carefully. "Your dad's life is very different from mine. He has a big job and money and people who expect things from him. And I'm just a teacher with a small apartment and a used car. Sometimes those two things feel like they don't fit together. And I needed time to figure out if I could handle that." "But you like my dad, right?" "I love your dad, and he loves you. He told me." "I know. Then why does other stuff matter?" Ivy's voice was small but fierce. "If you love each other, isn't that enough?" Out of the mouths of babes, a 7-year-old cutting through all the complexity to the simplest truth. "You're right. It should be enough." Sloane pulled Ivy closer. "I'm sorry I worried you." "That wasn't fair. Are you coming back?" "I want to. I'm trying to figure out how. Dad says trying is what matters, that you just have to keep choosing someone even when it's hard. Your dad is very smart." They sat together for another hour, Ivy chattering about school and her new obsession with astronomy and a boy in her class who ate glue. Normal kid things that reminded Sloane why she loved teaching, why she'd fought so hard to rebuild her life, and why losing this, losing Ivy, losing Griffin, losing the family they'd been building, would hurt more than any debt or betrayal ever had. When Griffin came to pick Ivy up, he stayed in the car, giving them privacy. But as Ivy ran toward him, she turned back and called, "See you soon, right?" "Yeah, soon." That night, Sloane called Griffin. She'd made her decision. They met at her apartment, familiar territory, and sat facing each other on her worn couch. Sloane pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them, and took a breath. "I talked to Ivy today." "I know. She came home happy for the first time in 2 weeks. She asked me why I left." Sloane's voice was soft, "and I realized I've been asking the wrong questions. I've been so focused on whether I can handle your world, whether our differences are too big, whether love is enough." But Ivy asked the simplest question. If we love each other, why does other stuff matter? Griffin leaned forward. "What did you tell her?" "That she was right." Sloane met his eyes. "I've been letting fear make my decisions. Fear of being hurt again, fear of losing myself, fear of not being enough. But you've never made me feel like I wasn't enough. That's all been me. Sloan, let me finish. She held up a hand. I need you to understand something. Your money will always make me uncomfortable. The power imbalance, the way you can solve problems, I can't the gulf between our day-to-day realities that's not going away. And I need you to be okay with me being uncomfortable sometimes. With me turning down help. With me insisting on paying my own way even when it's harder. I can do that. And I need rules. Clear boundaries about when you can help and when you need to step back. She straightened, ticking off on her fingers. You ask before you spend money on me or solve a problem I'm working on. Every time, no exceptions. Even if you think you know what I'd want. Agreed. If I say no to help, you respect that. You don't go around me or find creative ways to help anyway. You trust that I have reasons for declining. Okay. We keep our finances separate. I don't want access to your accounts and you don't get access to mine. We split costs on things we do together, proportional to our incomes if necessary, but we maintain separate financial lives. Griffin was quiet for a moment. What about emergencies? We discuss them when they happen, together, as equals. Fair enough. He studied her face. Is that it? One more thing. Sloane's voice dropped. If you break these boundaries, we're done. Not a fight, not a cooling off period. Done. Because I can't build a life with someone who doesn't respect my autonomy no matter how good his intentions are. The weight of that ultimatum hung between them. Griffin looked pained but resolute. I understand, and I agree to your terms, all of them. Can you actually follow them? Be honest. I think so. Griffin chose his words carefully. It'll be hard, going against every instinct I have about protecting the people I love. But I care about you more than I care about being comfortable. So yeah, I can follow them. Sloane searched his face for doubt or reservation, found only determination. Okay. Then we try again. With these new rules in place. Just like that. Not just like that. Sloane uncurled, moving closer. We've both changed in the last few months. I've learned that accepting help isn't the same as being helpless. You've learned that having power doesn't mean you should always use it. Maybe that's enough growth to build on. Griffin closed the distance between them, pulling her into a careful embrace. I love you. And I'm sorry I made you feel like your choices didn't matter. They do. You do. I love you too. Even though you're impossible and overbearing and think you can fix everything, I'm working on it. Good. Because I'm working on letting you help when it's actually helpful, instead of treating every offer like an attack on my independence. They stayed wrapped together for a long time, both aware of how close they'd come to losing this. Again, how hard the work ahead would be. But they'd survived it. And maybe that resilience was its own kind of strength. 4 months passed. Griffin genuinely tried to follow Sloane's boundaries, checking before he acted, accepting her refusals without argument. There were slip-ups, a donation to her school in her name, that she made him retract, a surprise upgrade on a flight they were taking together that led to a tense conversation about the difference between treats and overstepping. But they worked through it, talked about the missteps, adjusted their approach, kept choosing each other even when it would have been easier to walk away. Sloane tutored Piper twice a week and took on 2 other students. Cordelia had referred building a small side business that was entirely hers. The media attention faded as Griffin had predicted, replaced by newer scandals and more interesting stories. Ivy continued to be the best part of both their lives, growing taller and smarter and more opinionated by the day. She'd fully accepted Sloane as part of her family, which sometimes meant asking Sloane to take her side in arguments with her father, and sometimes meant brutal honesty about Sloane's cooking skills. No offense, Miss Sloane. Ivy poked at the casserole on her plate. But Dad's spaghetti is way better than this, none taken. Your dad has skills I lack. You're really good at other stuff, though, like helping with homework and finding the best library books. I'll take that trade. It was a year after their first date, almost to the day when Griffin asked Sloane to move in with him. They were sitting on her couch, still. Her couch in her apartment, though she spent at least half her nights at his place when he brought it up. I've been thinking. That's dangerous. Griffin smiled. Your lease is up next month. It is. I'm planning to renew. What if you didn't? Sloane set down her book. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you move in with us. You and me and Ivy actually living together instead of splitting time between two places. Griffin turned to face her fully. I know it's a big step. I know you value your independence and your space, but we've been together over a year and I can't imagine my life without you in it. Permanently. Griffin, before you answer, let me say this. He held up a hand. It wouldn't be me taking care of you or supporting you. We'd be actual partners sharing a life. You'd pay rent if you want to, or we could work out some other arrangement, your choice. And you'd have your own space. There's a room you could use as an office, or just a place to be alone when you need it. Sloane's heart was racing. That's a really big step. I know, and if you're not ready, I understand. But I want you to know the offer is there, that I want to wake up next to you every morning and come home to you every night and build an actual life together instead of coordinating schedules. She thought about her apartment, small, worn hers, the last vestige of her independent life, the proof that she could stand alone. And then she thought about Sunday morning pancakes with Ivy, about falling asleep next to Griffin every night, about being part of a family instead of visiting one. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. But Sloane Griffin caught her hand. You asked me once if I could sit with the discomfort of having resources and not using them. I've been trying. Now I'm asking if you can sit with the discomfort of accepting something good without assuming there's a catch. That hit harder than Sloane expected. She'd spent so long protecting herself, so convinced that accepting anything from anyone would cost her something essential, that she'd forgotten how to just receive. I'll think about it. Seriously. 2 days later, she called him from her classroom during lunch. The conditions she'd outlined for moving in were specific market-rate rent for what a room in that neighborhood would cost, non-negotiable. Final say on decorating her office space, no hired designers. And they'd tell Ivy together as a team because this affected her too, and she deserved to be part of the conversation. Griffin agreed to everything without hesitation. So, that's a yes. That's a yes. Sloane felt herself smiling. I'm moving in. You just made my whole year. They told Ivy that evening, sitting her down and explaining that Sloane would be living with them full-time if Ivy was okay with that. Ivy looked between them seriously. Does this mean Miss Sloane will be here for breakfast every day? Every day. And help with homework when you need it. And tell Dad when he's being annoying. Griffin laughed. Yes, that too. Okay, then she can move in. Ivy paused. Can I help decorate her office? That's up to Sloane. Sloane smiled. I could use a design consultant. What's your rate? Free, but you have to read me extra chapters at bedtime. Deal. The move happened gradually over 3 weeks. Sloane packed up her tiny apartment, sorted through possessions accumulated over years of careful budgeting, and slowly integrated her life into Griffin's house. It was strange at first having so much space, seeing her books on shelves in a home office that was bigger than her entire former living room, but it was also right. 6 months after moving in on a quiet Saturday morning when Ivy was at a sleepover, Griffin asked Sloane to go for a walk. They ended up at Imboldt Park, the place where so many of their important conversations had happened, and Griffin led her to a bench near the playground. I want to ask you something. Griffin's voice was careful. And I want you to know you can say no. That there's no pressure, and we don't have to change anything if you're not ready. Sloane's heart started pounding. Okay, I've been thinking about our future, about what I want and what you want, and how to build something that works for both of us. Griffin took both her hands. I don't want a big wedding with my mother's guest list and photographers and performance. I don't want you to feel like you're being absorbed into my life. I want us to build our life together as equals. Griffin, let me finish. Please, he took a breath. I'm saying I want to marry you. Not for show, not for some social obligation. Just because I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life and I want it to be official. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple ring. Elegant, but not ostentatious. Beautiful without being overwhelming. This isn't about money or status or any of that. It's about me choosing you and you choosing me and making that choice permanent." Sloane stared at the ring tears blurring her vision. "You're proposing? Very badly, apparently, because you look terrified." "I'm not terrified. I'm—" She laughed through tears. "I'm surprised and overwhelmed and really, really happy. Happy enough to say yes." Sloane thought about everything they'd been through, the lies and reconciliations, the fights about money and independence, the slow building of trust, the boundaries they'd established and maintained. Thought about Ivy asking if Sloane was leaving about Sunday pancakes and terrible diner coffee and coming home to people who loved her. Yes. On one condition. Name it. We do this our way. Small wedding, just people who matter. No performance, no press, no anything we don't actually want. Deal. Absolutely deal. Griffin slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, which she'd question him about later, and pulled her into a kiss that tasted like promises and possibility. They were married 6 months later in Humboldt Park on a spring morning with fewer than 30 people in attendance. Sloane wore a simple dress she'd found on sale. Ivy wore her favorite sneakers, not fancy shoes, and Griffin cried when Sloane walked toward him with Reese as her only attendant. Vivian Hale didn't attend, which was fine with everyone involved. Garrett stood as Griffin's best man and gave a toast about stubborn people finding each other. Reese cried through her entire speech about watching her sister learn to trust again, and when the officiant pronounced them married, Sloane kissed her husband and thought about the journey that had brought them here, every fight and reconciliation, every fear overcome and boundary set, and knew they'd built something real, something that honored both of them, that didn't require either to sacrifice who they were. 2 years after the wedding, Sloane got a promotion to lead teacher at her school overseeing curriculum development. She loved the work, loved that her career was thriving, independent of her husband's resources. Griffin scaled back his hours at the company, prioritizing time with family over constant availability. Ivy grew into a confident 10-year-old who still loved space and reading and called Sloane Mom now, a shift that had happened gradually and naturally and still made Sloane's heart swell every time she heard it. They still went to the Bluebird for pancakes. Most Sundays still argued about which diner had better coffee. Still read books together and took walks and built the kind of quiet, steady life that didn't make headlines, but filled all the spaces that mattered. One evening, as they sat on their back porch watching Ivy practice skateboarding in the driveway, Griffin took Sloane's hand. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing this life?" "Never. Not once." Sloane squeezed his hand. Are you kidding? Marrying you was the smartest thing I've ever done." Sloane rolled her eyes but smiled. "You're never going to let me forget that you were right about us. Are you?" "Nope." He grinned. "One good decision and I'm dining out on it forever." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughter land a trick and throw her arms up in triumph. Sloane thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago, walking into that coffee shop, dressed to repel connection, convinced she was better off alone, certain that letting anyone in would only lead to more wreckage. That woman had been strong but incomplete, capable but closed off, surviving but not truly living. She'd learned that accepting help wasn't weakness, that love didn't require sacrificing yourself, that you could be independent and part of a partnership, simultaneously, that the right person didn't complete you, but complemented you, making you more yourself instead of less. And Griffin had learned that fixing problems wasn't the same as showing love, that respecting boundaries mattered more than good intentions, that true partnership meant walking beside someone, not clearing their path. Together, they'd learned that love was choice every morning, every argument, every moment of doubt, choosing to stay, choosing to work through it, choosing each other over and over until it became as natural as breathing. "Hey," Ivy called from the driveway. Watch this." She executed a perfect trick, landing solidly and throwing her arms up in triumph. Sloane and Griffin applauded, and Ivy beamed with pride before skating off to try something even more ambitious. "She's fearless. She gets that from both of us." Sloane leaned her head on Griffin's shoulder. "Yeah, I think you're right." They stayed there as the sun set, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, wrapped in the quiet certainty of a love that had been tested and proven challenged and strengthened, built deliberately and carefully into something that would last. Not because it was easy, not because it was perfect, but because it was real and honest and worth every difficult conversation, every moment of doubt, every choice to stay when leaving would have been simpler. This was what happened when two damaged people chose to heal together, instead of alone when they built something new, instead of trying to fit into each other's existing lives when they respected each other enough to maintain their identities while creating something shared. This was partnership. This was family. This was home. And it was more than enough.